Workplace Relations Minister. Tony Burke, meanwhile, has announced the new protections for gig economy workers. Joining me now to discuss this, the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry Chief Executive, Andrew McKellar. Thanks for your time. I'll just pop this down so the viewers can see you on that camera. So gig economy changes. What do you make of the principle behind this? That it's a new way to work. It's a bit of a limbo as to whether you work for someone or not. And some of these people are on some pretty dire hourly rates. Is that something we need to fix?
Well, I think what we heard from the Minister today was an admission on 2 points, and that is, firstly, the level of complexity as a result of the arrangements the government are going to introduce, that'll increase. It'll make it harder to take people on through this system. And of course, let's remember, in many cases, people are looking to make up a bit of extra money. They want flexibility. They're not necessarily looking to work in a full-time capacity or anything like it. So I think here the concern is the government is really limiting people's options and flexibility. They're making it harder for platforms to take people on. And secondly, the Minister openly admitted costs will go up. So it will be more expensive to get your takeaway. It'll be more expensive to get a ride home. This is something on top of all of the existing cost of living pressures that people are facing at the moment.
When you say people want flexibility, if you've got someone right now that previously started was working one job, all these interest rate rises, maybe they got out and got a second job because they had to. Surely they weren't keen to do it for $9 or $12 an hour, but they have to. They're not going to say no to this. Is that something, again, is that issue something you think we need to fix? Or are you saying, look, if it's that bad an hourly rate, people won't do the job. Let the market decide.
So on this, in the areas where the real concerns have been identified, which is rideshare and food delivery, the major providers in there who are doing the right thing, they've said, to be very clear, they will agree to a very consistent, simple set of standards which address issues of pay, insurance and record keeping. If those can be applied, then I think we've got a solution. We don't need to rope in all of these other areas. So we're talking about roping in the care economy.
Let's talk about them first of all. So if that happens, how do you think that should work in principle? Does it sort of ameliorate the overall money and one person, earning a lot of money and ends up going to someone else? Or does it just put a floor on someone's wages in that situation?
Well, I think it achieves exactly what the government has said its objective was, which is to provide, some guarantees, some minimum standards, which are safe and practical, but which still enable these businesses to compete, to innovate, to offer flexibility, and also to be attractive for the people who are trying to provide services.
And people might pay a bit more for the takeaway or delivery. We're already paying more, but I think people don't really realise it. If you look at, go into a restaurant and look at their menu and then look at the Uber menu. The Uber menu it's not just a delivery, you're paying more per item. And that's sort of how they, Uber charges them, they charge the customers. So given how popularity Uber, DoorDash, I shouldn't just be plugging Uber, but all these companies are, and we're paying the extra amount without really caring, it shows we're willing to pay extra for convenience.
Well, people are prepared to pay for a service. Of course, it's a competitive service and these things stack up. Now, that's what you've got to test in the marketplace. But what the Minister is saying here is he will introduce regulation, additional red tape, it'll add complexity and it'll add to costs. Now, that's a straight up admission. And I think that's something that's got to be taken into account. We should go into this with our eyes open. That's going to be one of the implications.
Okay, but you think it can be managed okay for the driver, ride share and so on aspect?
Those companies have said that. I think where we have broader concerns...
And they're big enough to sort out the red tape and so on. That's what you're saying there. They'll be able to sort it out. Your concerns are... Give us an example of how you don't think this will work in the care economy. Is it Mabel, which people are talking about?
Mabel is a very good example. It's one that seems to be in the sites. It's not clear why they're in the sites because they are effectively a marketplace. They are bringing together people who are providing, personal care services, professional, paraprofessional, so on. There are minimum rates on that website. on that application. So this is not a free for all.
There's not someone going there for $8 an hour to get.
Oh, absolutely not, or anything like that. In fact, I think their minimum rate is in the 30s per hour. So I mean, these are responsible service providers. Now we've heard the minister say today they're going to be roped in, but another service provider, another application like Airtasker won't. When he faced questioning on that began to unravel, because all of a sudden, if you can get the same services on another app like Airtasker, he was saying, okay, well maybe that
because they both might be individual contractors.
It could be the same. It could be the same person. It could be the same person.
And the issue is what? So if you go to Mabel and you've got this complicated formula around, here's your experience, or here's the service, and here's the going rate, or here's what the award is, here's what you need to pay per hour. And that means the service gets more expensive. I mean, the person giving it probably likes it, but then maybe the service isn't used as much because they say, well, that costs too much.
Look, I think there's a very transparent agenda here, and that is the HSU has a particular issue with Mabel. They don't have an issue with Airtasker. So I think this is entirely been driven by where the unions are trying to set their agenda, where they are concerned about the risk to their recruitment opportunities or membership opportunities. It's got nothing to do with productivity.
Right.
It's got nothing to do with generating more jobs. It's got nothing to do with making it easier to run a business or to increase wages or anything like that.
And the type of person on either Airtasker or Mabel, I mean, I guess it could be anything. It could be someone running their entire business there, or someone that wants to do 5 hours of extra work outside of their full-time job, pick up a bit of extra money, save for a holiday, whatever it might be.
So I think that's exactly the point. And what the minister has outlined doesn't provide the flexibility to deal with those issues, and it doesn't provide a clear-cut line. So I think here, the problem is we are creating more complexity, more regulation, making it harder to create jobs.
All right. Overall, changes were alluded to today by a few of, I guess they're your colleagues, the other business groups. I'm not sure if you get together or how you describe each other, but it's the totality of changes. But is there anything that's happened yet, or is this just still a warning of it's coming? It's going.
Well, it's coming. I mean, the legislation will be introduced. It's now.
I mean, all the other elements. What's this tranche 3 and the part of it's passed, part of it hasn't.
Yeah.
Nothing dire has happened yet, but you're adamant it will. That's sort of where
we're very concerned with the combination of all of the things that have come through. So the past legislation, which a lot of it came into effect from 1 July, so we're yet to see that really playing out in the marketplace. Time will tell. So as unions decide whether or not they're going to go for multi-employer agreements in future bargaining rounds, then we'll see what the impact of that past legislation is going to be.
Thought I'd just ask you finally, we're nearly out of time, about inflation. Sure. Job done now? Should Michelle Bullock put the feet up, cancel the next few meetings? You could send her some goodies from, businesses under your umbrella. No need to even consider raising hikes for the rest of the year.
Well, I think the figures we saw earlier this week, they're positive news, but by no means is the challenge over. Inflation is not yet fully back down into the Reserve Bank's target range. So the good news is some of those heightened pressures have come off a bit. So the past interest rate increases have had an impact.
Well, and there's still more that will have an impact.
That's correct. That is correct. So
given where it's headed, I mean, it'd be an all-time shock to see another rate rise this year at least.
Well, we certainly think that the Reserve Bank should stay its hand for the foreseeable future. Obviously, let's see what happens after that. But hopefully we can get inflation continuing to move back down to that target range.
And if that's the last rate rise, where do you think we can sort of level out at unemployment? Because 4.5% was one of the warnings from Michelle Bullock. Do you think it could be quite a lot lower than that this might be quite a soft landing on that front?
Look, the good thing for the Australian economy would be if we can stay at or as near as possible to full employment, then that'll be a great thing for the country. So,
do you want to put a number on it for me?
Well, I'm not going to. I mean, clearly we expect there'll be some increase from 3.5%, but
if growing confidence within the business sector, it can stay well below 4.5%.
We're always optimistic. Let's see what the figures say over the coming months. There are challenges, of course. The legislation the government's introducing right now won't help that.
I guess you've got to be optimistic to start a small business.